Good afternoon. This meeting of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission will now come to order. Today is Saturday, September 3rd, and the time is 1:36 p.m. And if you'll all rise, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. We'll begin with the call to order. Vice Chair Freeman.
Here.
Vice Chair Herrera. Here. Commissioner McNulty. Here. Commissioner Sturts.
Here.
We have a quorum. Other folks around the room today are our legal counsel today, Kristen Wintberg and Joe Canfield. We also have a mapping consultant, Willie Desmond. We have a court reporter today, Marty Herder. So when public comment comes around, be sure to remember to spell your name so that we get an accurate spelling in the transcript. We have Stu Robinson, our Public Information Officer. Buck Forrest is our Chief Technology Officer. Our Executive Director, Ray Bladine, is in the room, in the house, and so is our Deputy Executive Director, Christina Gomez. I think that's all we have today from staff. And thanks to all the members of the public who came out today on a Labor Day weekend to talk to us or follow us. Our next item on the agenda is map presentations, public proposals. So I don't have any requests to speak, anyone who has actual maps to present to us today. Was there anyone that we just haven't heard from yet? Okay, this will be a recurring agenda item for the commission, so from now on out, there will be an opportunity for the public to tell us about any maps they would like to present. The next item on the agenda is number 3, review, discussion, and direction to mapping consultant regarding ideas for possible adjustments to the congressional grid map based on constitutional criteria. And I believe Mr. Desmond did his homework last night, and we received in front of us this morning some what-if scenarios that we had given him direction on yesterday. So we'll start with those and let Mr. Desmond take over.
Thank you. All right. So I think if it's okay with everyone, we can start with the what-if scenario that is whole counties version 2. There's 4 new maps, 2 versions of this map, and then 2 new versions of the river district. Sorry, just one second. Sorry. Okay. So for this version of the whole counties map, it was adjusted just to take into account Native American areas. I believe that in the process of not splitting any reservation lands, we did have to split some more of the counties. Just bear with me for 1 second, I'm sorry. I don't have that. I know we had to split Mojave County. Mojave County, we had to split Pinal County twice, and we also had to split Graham County in order to not split Native American lands. Other than that, the map remained roughly the same. Most of the changes came in Maricopa. since in this district, places where counties need to pick up or lose population, a lot of that happens in Maricopa, because it's one of the counties that needs to be split just by necessity. So, for instance, when District 5 took into account all of Coconino County in order to not split the Navajo and Hopi reservation, and then also went into Mojave a little bit, that added about 150,000 people to that district. Additionally, when we went a little bit further into Greenlee and Graham, not into Greenlee, just into Graham, that also added a little bit more population. As a result, down in Maricopa County, we had to kind of reallocate some to District 4 and to Districts 3, I believe. Is there some specific areas you guys would like to see, or is there anything you want me to look at?
Madam Chair. Mr. Desmond, could you go in on the proposed District 4 and just take a look at where, I guess I'd like to see the census places and see how far it intrudes into Maricopa County.
Okay. Okay, so it takes part of, Sun City, Peoria, Whitman, Morristown, Buckeye, and it looks like a little bit of Goodyear also in the bottom. I can go farther west if you like, or we can see which one is of those municipalities it splits or takes part of. I did pay attention when I had to make changes to try to keep whole areas this time, due to time constraints and stuff. I wasn't necessarily, I didn't worry about it too much. I didn't fuss over it, just to try to get a lot more done for today. So, would you like me to zoom in anywhere to look a little bit more closely, or does that pretty much answer your question? Sorry.
Well, that answers that question. Let me look at it a little more.
Yeah, no problem.
Now, this one, you did not attempt to take into account, create the voting rights districts.
No, that would be version 3, which we can look at next, or I can just go ahead and load up right away. Why don't I just load that one up?
Sure.
All right. So there is another version following this one, version 3, which takes into account the voting rights districts that were submitted by the Hispanic Coalition for Good Government. So we accepted their changes. We accepted their changes wholly, and then just adjusted our maps to reflect that. Sorry. This isn't the... So excuse me for 1 second. I'm sorry. There's some issue right now. I'm just gonna. Sorry for 1 second. I'm gonna have to reload it off of a backup. Something seems to have gotten a little screwed up. Excuse me. I apologize. So one nice thing about the system we're using and how we've been going about this is each change is logged, so I do have the ability to go back to any one of the versions while I was making it. So these are all the changes that I made when adjusting it to meet the sorry, some issue. Technical difficulty. Excuse me.
If you don't mind me asking you a question while you do that. Are these going to be posted versions on our website?
Yeah,
Or?
I believe they'll be posted very shortly.
Okay, and could I get these from you before we leave today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Buck just nodded. They should be up within the next 15, 20 minutes, I think, or half hour or so. So they'll all be posted. All right. I'm sorry if you guys would all bear with me for just a little while. I really apologize to make you wait, but I would like to get this sorted out. I'm going to try loading it one more time. This will take a minute, unfortunately. Sorry. I swear it worked an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, would you like to conduct any other business while Mr. Desmond is doing this? Or?
Yeah, I was just looking at the agenda to see what we might cover. We have the future meetings and future agenda items, the executive director's report. Anything on future agenda items that anybody has thought of since yesterday that we want to add? There's one item I wanted to add that actually has been discussed by our commission a bunch since the beginning, frankly, and that's this issue of transparency. So I thought maybe we could have a discussion about that at our next meeting, because it's been raised again recently, and I thought that might be a good one to cover. So maybe if Mr. Bladine's around, he can put that on our next item. Next meeting, which is Thursday? Okay. Okay, yeah, we'll get the agenda posted by Tuesday, so if we could add that.
Discussion of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, can you go into a little more detail? I want to make sure that I understand what you're talking about. I think I do.
Sure. There've just been, from the very beginning, there's been discussion of, whether commissioners themselves should log, for instance, all contacts that they have with the outside to indicate, who's contacting them and who they're talking to. And it's been raised in public comment numerous times at our meetings, and recently was in the Arizona Capitol Times, an editorial on that, and I just think it's worth talking about. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree.
Again, I apologize. This is
It's okay. Any other agenda items anyone has for our meeting on Thursday?
Madam Chair, this issue of transparency would also apply to the staff and our attorneys?
Are you asking, would it apply to them?
I'm saying that it should apply to them as well, that conversation.
Okay. We'll discuss that at our next meeting.
While this is going, does anyone have any other what-if maps they would like me to work on before the next meeting?
Commissioners, do you have any guidance for Mr. Desmond?
Or is there any questions I can answer about these maps before you can actually see them?
Madam Chair, on the issue of the transparency discussion, I think as a prelude to that, it would be helpful to have our attorneys give us a summary of what the rules are that apply to the legislature, both in terms of their obligations and the lobbying rules, so that we understand what the framework is for the legislature. Thank you.
Okay. I see Mr. Canfield noting that. Thank you.
Okay, I believe we were successful. So I don't know how much you want me to go into what I think went wrong, but I think it was just
That's okay.
merging the plans. I did remove the extra parts that was left over, and I think it was looking for those and it's tripping itself up. So we started from the completed plans block equivalency file. And I think we're good to go now. So if I zoom back out, yes, this is the District 3, and then District 7 were taken exclusively from, or directly from Hispanic Coalition for Good Government's proposed districts for this map. As a result, there were some areas that were no longer allocated to any districts, and some parts of districts that were like little islands floating. So that all had to be kind of reworked out. Again, I attempted to keep whole municipalities and census places together. However, just due to time constraints, I didn't obsess over that. If you want to look at the data table, you can see there is 2 majority-minority districts now. District 7 is 60.22%. District 3 is 53.38%. And again, that's because those are the districts that the Hispanic Coalition submitted.
But this map did not attempt to accommodate Indian reservations. I mean, are you able to show us where?
It did. Because I used the earlier version that did accommodate reservation lands, and also because the Hispanic Coalition did not split any. There are no split reservation lands here, to the best of my knowledge. And I can turn that layer on. Give me 1 second.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Sturts?
Mr. Desmond, while you're turning layers on, are you able to turn on the just population density layers?
Yes, just population density of everybody, or
Of
voting
everybody.
age population?
Looking most specifically for example, in the District 5, where the population density pockets are,
Sure.
for example.
Sorry, just 1 second. It's just the ceiling. Did I catch it? Okay, so this is population per square mile. So the lightest shade is under 500 people per square mile. Slightly darker shade is 500 to 1,000. And let me know, I can narrow this down a little bit. I was just kind of guessing there. So I apologize if it's a little hard to see. I can tweak it however you think would be useful. So you wanted to look into District 5, any particular areas in District 5?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
I chose District 5 as an example of a large landmass that has broken up large chunks of population into different areas. And I wanted to determine if we look at the general population of the tribal lands and where the population of the tribal lands are all inclusive in the northern tribal lands as they would compare against the offset of the urban population, about where the concentration of population would be.
Okay. Well, so there is a concentration of population down in Maricopa County. I'm just looking. So then Flagstaff also. There's not really anybody who lives in this part of the state. So I mean, the population is the only place there is any real density in the district is in Maricopa County.
So, Madam Chair, Willie, if you could tell me if of those areas right there in Maricopa County, how many folks are in that small piece of real estate of the 710,000 in District 5?
All right, I think the best way to do that would be to look at how it would affect if we put them in a new district. So I'm gonna say I'll take them from District 5 and put them in a new district. So that represents 242,000 people, the area that I just shaded in red. So I guess roughly 1/3 of the district.
And would you now extract out to see the entire district?
Sure.
Okay. My question is, this is going to lead on to, is that as we are looking at representation, representatives of congressmen, that you've got a third of the population is concentrated in that small area of that large district. If we are looking to make a combination of all of the tribal lands and the 165,000 tribal members, the level of representation that they may or may not receive from a representative, I think that was a consideration in the last analysis of trying not to make a large combination of all tribal lands into one specific district.
Okay. So, and then just to answer, just to expand on that, I guess, there's about 100,000 Native American voting age population in the other part of the district.
Okay.
And that's not necessarily compared to that section, because that section is all population. So if you look at District 5, there's 531,000 voters. So it's about a little less than a fifth of the district as it's currently constituted is Native American. Are there other, and well, I was just going to say, I think in some respects this map might emphasize that issue, just because so many of the districts did have to reach into Maricopa in order to keep whole counties. So it might be particularly worse in this particular what-if scenario.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Freeman?
Well, just to recap on this thought experiment, we took our grid map, and then the next version was to create a map that tried to maximize respect for county boundaries. That is to say, split as few counties as possible, recognizing that where the population concentrations are in Maricopa and Pima County are inevitably going to lead to a split. Then the next version, version 2, was to redraft it so that tribal areas are kept whole, and then version 3 was then to also overlay one of the minority coalition maps to create the minority majority districts, and really with no other consideration. And there's probably more than one way to do this, recognize that as well. So no, I thank you for preparing those, and I'd just like to study them further before we tinker more with them.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair,
Ms. McNulty?
I do think this is interesting and revealing and helpful. I do have a few thoughts about county boundaries as we've gone through this process. One is that I think we've gotten a lot of comment from folks who live on county lines, and it's clear that people who tend to live on the boundaries of counties have relationships with adjacent counties. It's also true, I think, that these county boundaries were drawn, 200 years ago, 150 years ago in the 19th century, the 18th century, kind of arbitrarily. And so, well, I think it's a really useful exercise, and in some cases it makes sense. I think in other cases there are going to be other factors that probably weigh more heavily, at least in my mind, but I think it's a really useful exercise to look at.
Other comments or questions?
Can I just mention real quickly?
Sure.
The maps are up on the website under the maps page.
Thank
If
you.
anybody watching on the live stream would like to download this information or the data tables that accompany them.
Thanks.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Freeman?
I just wanted to add that I agree with everything Commissioner McNulty said, with the possible section of how the county lines were drawn. I know initially the state had, I forget, probably 4 counties. I'm probably wrong on that, but there's been a few splits since then. And I'm sure the people, when they drew the lines, when they split the counties, there were some reasons they had to split them. So I don't know if they're completely arbitrary. And since then, you know, the localities have organized their governments around those lines. So I think that's why it's one of the constitutional criteria. And this is, like Commissioner McNulty said, a thought experiment. So, and I do agree, there are people who probably live near county lines who may have a stronger relationship with an adjoining county. That's, I think, our next iteration down the road for all of these thought experiments, as we'll get into those kind of details.
And I should have mentioned also, this third version did also split Yuma County, obviously, and Pinal County gets even more sliced up here.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Willie, as a continuing place of the exercise, the criteria is that the overview criteria includes geography. As Commissioners McNulty and Freeman just said, that inclusive of that is municipalities, of course, and counties, but geographical features. In Maptitude, is there a definition of geographical features that you are using?
No, not that I've been using.
Because geography can be vast land tracts, or it could be mountain ranges, or it could be rivers, of which many of those were part of the designation of county lines. Some were divisions purely to divide equally, of equal mass. So is there any layering that includes that as part of Maptitude?
It's something we could look at more. I would say that census geography tends to be drawn to reflect natural features. So it will follow a mountain range. It does run along rivers and stuff. So at the block level and then at the block group level and even at the tract level, it tends to follow those types of natural features that you just mentioned. It's not something I have been emphasizing at this point, and I'm not even totally sure how good the coverage is. So I would want to look into that a little bit more offline before I give you a solid answer as to whether or not that's preloaded in Maptitude. I do think a lot of that information is available and is something we could add in to these maps. We can take other shape files, and geographic information is one of the most extensively available types of shapefile, and we could add those in and use that as kind of a guideline going forward.
I found that Madam Chair, I found as a practical sense that your overlay onto Google Maps becomes very prevalent, because you can see rivers maps and concentrations of homes and where the mountains are, but it makes it less practical in Maptitude.
Yeah, and I can load Google Maps underneath this and look at it in Maptitude. It just dramatically slows everything down to every time you adjust the map, it has to reload completely. And so I've avoided doing that, mainly just because of the time factor.
Is there data in regards to our traffic corridors and traffic patterns? Is there data that is available that can be also loaded into Maptitude?
Well, there's streets and extensively already loaded. As far as traffic patterns, I don't know. There's nothing going to be loaded in Maptitude, because that's not a census type of field. So that would have to come from a third party.
That throws into the communities of interest and the connectivity between communities. If you've got highways that are connecting or roadways that are connecting, again, alluding back to where the original lines were drawn, there were dust trails at that time, and now we're talking about an interstate grid system and a little bit different traffic patterns that really designate where people are coming and going.
Yeah, and from the public hearings, there was a lot of talk of some of the different, like the I-17 corridor and some of those types of things. So,
is that data that, I guess the question is to all the commissioners, is that data, because it is not data that is generally census-driven, is that data that we would want to collect for use of our determining process? One of those data points I was speaking of yesterday.
Other commissioners, do you have thoughts on Mr. Sturts' question?
Yes, my thought is that we're going to know that as we go through these communities and areas. Those are things that I think we'll be aware of and be able to direct.
I guess my question, Madam Chair, Commissioner McNulty, is that how do you become aware unless we collect the data? I mean, there's real empirical data that's collected on every municipality and every street of data and traffic patterns. It would be, I think, incumbent upon us to know what that would be, rather than knowing what the empirical data would be as a design criteria rather than just an opinion of the criteria. I don't think that's what you're referring to, but...
I was referring to, I think the public is the public input the knowledge that we're developing of the communities is what would drive it, as distinct from empirical data on a map, because a map is going to show us a lot of roads, and they may or may not be important conduits for community purposes, and I think communities will tell us that, have been telling us that. So
Madam Chair, if I'm hearing you correct, as we drill this down, that as we would be able to collect data that might be empirical based on particular opinions or testimony that would be given saying, we believe that this is a data corridor that needs to be respected and contained together in a particular legislative district for a community of interest. That we'd be able to actually collect that, instead of collecting the entire state, collect it on a need-to basis.
that would be my thought about the way to consider it. You know,
Okay.
as people, for example, in Flagstaff, I think there's been input about the I-40 corridor, which would be just an example that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have thoughts and ideas on that? Opinions?
Do we want to look at some more what-ifs?
Sorry?
Do we want to look at some more what-if scenarios?
Sure. So version 2 and version 3, we've done.
Yep,
Okay.
those are available on the website. And
Great.
I should say most of version 2's changes are taken into account for version 3's also.
Okay. So the other is the River District versions 3 and 4.
Okay. And I hope this one opens up just fine. It should. Oh. Not good. Sorry, I'm gonna have to do that same slower process. I really apologize. I don't know what's going on here.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Herrera?
does Mr. Bladine have an executive director's report you'd like to give?
Yes, that's what I was thinking. There he is. So we'll jump to agenda item 6, Executive Director's Report.
I really don't have much to report from yesterday, but my plan is to take the agenda, the dates and meeting times that you all gave me yesterday, type them up and email them to you so you'll have them before the end of the day. And then we will, I'll start working also on the agenda for Thursday, since we'll have to get that posted Tuesday morning. I think we talked yesterday about the data we had inputted and the maps, and I don't believe that I have anything else to report.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't make it longer.
Me too. Yeah.
I can dance, maybe.
Well,
Mr. Sturts?
You'd
Madam
rather
Chair.
not.
Well, I can help you make it longer.
Okay.
Actually, there's 2 questions I've got for you. The first
Sure.
is, looking back at meeting minutes, at the last meeting we approved 2 weeks in the month of April. Obviously, they were taken out completely out of sequence, and because they were obviously an oversight.
Correct.
That they weren't picked up before. Where are we in regards to our meeting minutes and them being approved, reviewed and approved and posted?
With those 2, all of the meeting minutes will have been approved that we have. I think we still need to go back and correct the ones from the time before where there were typos that the commission has to be changed before they're reposted. But that, to my knowledge, covers all of the minutes up to date. Since, and as I recall, we decided that since we have the transcripts and the posting, that we would do kind of a summary of action items and post that. And we will start doing that probably next week. I think we have quite a few in that we haven't got posted yet. But all of the meeting video is on, I think, except maybe the last meeting, and we also are pretty caught up on transcripts.
Okay. And then also in your executive director's report, it's regarding an overview of recent public input. As far as Catalyst is concerned. Catalyst is now up and operating.
I don't believe it's up and operating yet, but I think it will be like early next week. Christina probably knows that better than I do. Here she comes. I know that I think we have all of the data inputted that we need. I'm not sure whether it's actually up and searchable yet.
And maybe for the sake of for any public that may or may not be watching or watch in the future of this, you might describe what Catalyst is and what its purpose is.
Hi. Catalyst is actually up and running. Staff has been using it to log all of the public input that we've received so far. We are working on that right now. And also, Catalyst is the system that we'll also be using to enter in all of our transcripts as well. And we will also be entering all of the news media articles, which I'm working on right now. So this is a searchable base that's used for staff, for the commissioners, and for legal counsel.
Very good.
And I believe Mr. Dressler did send out an email yesterday afternoon to all of the commissioners with a user guide document, and also with the password and with your username, so you can log in and start searching documents.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for
Hurry
Mr.
up, will you,
Bladine?
Willie? We need you to get on because Christina's showing me up. She knows what's going on.
Mr. Bladine, Madam Chair, if,
Mr. Herrera?
for the second round of hearings, are you planning on hiring any more staff?
I think we'll have one more person we'll add, and I believe we are looking at September 12th to add one more person for the outreach staff for that second round.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Mr. Bladine, what is the schedule for the start date of the second round of hearings, and what is the term? How many cities will we be going out to, and has anything changed since the last tentative schedule that was presented?
I'll let Christina help me with this also, but I think that we're still looking to start on the 26th, 27th of September, and I'll let her go with the numbers because I know she knows them.
I believe we have a total of 23 public hearings. We have added one at the request of the Navajo Nation. We did add the Kayenta location. So that would make 24. We are thinking of having simultaneous meetings. So with your permission, we are hoping to have 2 meetings on the same night.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Herrera?
when you say simultaneous, are they going to be going on at the same time?
Yes.
So that means we'll be renting equipment, or?
That's another issue. We're also thinking of looking into working with a streaming firm to go ahead and to negotiate a few meetings with them, just to get us through the few weeks of public hearings. But also during the first round of public hearings, there were a few cities who actually allowed us to use their streaming system or their video equipment. So that kind of that took pressure off of Buck having to go to every single meeting. So.
Is there a way they could be consecutive, or are these just too geographically disparate that we can't?
I need to look into that.
Just curious what the situation was.
So we're actually going to start working on that on Monday.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
Sorry, Tuesday.
Yeah, it is a holiday. Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
I think that's a good idea. If, we're having 24 visits, I think we need to double up as many as we can in order for us to be able to accommodate that schedule and still have enough time to take public input into account before we come up with another draft map.
Commissioner Herrera, Chairman, Christina and I had the discussions we're talking with you about, how might we do that. We have some ways to go in terms of figuring it out, but as she mentioned, one might be if a city can do the streaming, then maybe we can do another city with our equipment. Perhaps we could hire another firm to fill in. So we're looking at alternatives to try to do that so that we can get as much input in as reasonable period of time as we can. But we'll come back with you with more details once we get it worked out. I would comment, and I think I did last time, we have had discussions with Flagstaff, and they would prefer to be on a weekend versus the first. On the other hand, we had some discussion with the Navajo Nation, and they would be happy to be first and at the start of a week. So we're trying to figure out how to work that in so that we can start on the 26th, 27th, still meet Flagstaff's request. And then, of course, we all need to figure out how your schedules are going to go. So as soon as we can get some tentative dates together next week, we'll start shooting them out to all of you, and then we'll also come back with you to ask for specific approvals the way we're going to proceed. And I'm sure as last time, we'll have some cities that'll drop out and others come in, but we'll try to be true to the areas that you wanted to go, and we'll keep you informed on that as we proceed.
Mr. Bladine, have you talked to the ASU about using their community college system?
I have not yet. It has been on my list and is on my list now for Tuesday, but I will.
Please
They do.
contact them.
They appear as if they may have something at Sky Song, is the last information I had, that can broadcast out to other areas. I'm not sure whether it's back and forth or out, but we are going to follow up on that.
Any other comments for Mr. Bladine or Ms. Gomez?
Okay.
Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
And how are we doing on the mapping?
I think we're all set.
Okay.
So for this version of the map, we're asked to remove as much of Maricopa County from the river district as possible, move that into like rural Pinal County, I guess. You're not able to remove all of Maricopa County really because you need to go through it to get to Pinal County. But that was my intent there, so I think if we, first of all, I'll look at Maricopa County. And it is kind of it's a very ugly district. In order to do this, if I turn on, you can see some of the. So District 8 is one of the northern districts. District 3 is not. This District 4, this area all over here, this is what's included in the River District in Maricopa County. So, if we look up, it has Maricopa, it has Morristown, Wickenburg, parts of Buckeye, both the north and the south, Gila Bend, is this Deba or Deba? I'm not sure how to pronounce that one, I'm sorry. So apologize if I got that wrong. And then I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see. So then it comes through and picks up, basically it picks up a lot of Casa Grande, goes south down to the Pima County border, and then north over here. And that was just in order to pick up enough population to make it, reach right around the 710,000 that it needs to have. I should also mention that because District Number 2 had to be altered in order to accommodate this, the Hispanic population in that district did drop a little bit. It's still above 50%, but it went from 52.25 to, I think, 50.07. So it's a little bit less voting age Hispanic now. And it might help quickly if I shade. So it's it kind of circles Maricopa. It does have some of the you know, the outer lining, more rural areas, but does have a little bit of it. And then one thing I forgot to mention yesterday when we were talking about the previous change to this district is that in order to keep Coconino whole, I had to, you know, take some more population from Maricopa, but I did need to give district number 5 a little bit more population, so I took that from Yavapai and moved parts of, you know, Sedona and then a little bit of this area up to District 5 also. So that's one place it differed that I forgot to mention yesterday. Is there specific things you'd like me to look at with this one?
Madam Chair, maybe can you put the, well, maybe you do have the places later on.
I can zoom in and it'll.
Yeah, maybe we'll zoom in where 2 curls up around and yeah, right there where you have the hand.
Yeah, right here?
Right in there, yeah.
Okay. Would it helpful if I shaded the districts again so you can kind of see? How they
Yeah, go ahead. So it looks like it's following the Gila County line there, and so we've got Superior, Kearney, Hayden, or Winkleman probably in there as well.
That actually follows, there's a reservation there.
Okay.
That dips down right here. And I can add that layer in. Sorry, I didn't have that set because we had to sorry. So yeah, there's the San Carlos reservation is right here. And if I turn this off for a second, and you can see this is the county line. So it follows the county line here, and then
Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
I had recommended some changes to that version. Is there any way, I mean, I guess I didn't anticipate that the Hispanic voting population would dip down that much. To me, I think that's a significant amount. Can we reverse those changes?
yeah, and then there is, you know, another version where I started back with.
Is that 4?
That's
Okay.
4.
Well, before you do that, let's look at 4 to see.
Okay, and again, bear with me. If this doesn't open, I'm not sure what's going on. These were all working this morning. I printed everything off this morning, so I'm not sure. So I apologize if this doesn't open right away again.
Mr. Desmond, you don't need to apologize. Technology is what it is.
Oh, success. It worked. I shouldn't say that so fast. Okay. So in this version, we took what we had. It took version number 2, which was changed from the original river district to keep Coconino whole, and not split any Native American areas in the north, and we adjusted it based off of the Hispanic Coalition for Good Government's own districts. So now district number 2 follows that district's line exactly, and our district number 6 follows theirs also. So very similar to the third version of the of the whole counties map. Those 2 districts are again exactly the same in here. And it surprisingly didn't. There was some real shifts in district number 3. I guess needed to gain some more population. As district number 1 gets bigger using the Hispanic Coalition's line, and there were some shifts in Maricopa, but other than that, it fit fairly well with what we already had.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
Jasmine, can you, how far of a jump? I know that on the version 3, that District 7 is 50.92 HVAP, and in the version number 4, it's 60.22. Can you explain that?
Well, in that version number 4, it comes directly from the Hispanic Coalition for Good Government, so that's the number that they submitted for their proposed district.
Mr. Disman, how is this map different from River District version 2?
It's different in that it's basically 2, but with the Hispanic Coalition's
Okay.
Districts. And then as a result, we had to change a little bit here in Maricopa. Maybe it would be helpful if I added version number 2 as a layer. And then
Could you
can
do
see
that?
those change. Yeah. I think. Too many greens, I'm sorry. The colors again. Okay, so the red line was where we had it in version number 2. And then the green line and the current district line is the Hispanic Coalition in our current iteration.
Okay, thank you.
So in our old version 2, there had been some changes made to include parts of Glendale up to Northern Road, put Ahwatukee and Tempe into district number 6. So some of those changes matched fairly closely actually what the Hispanic Coalition asked for, but then there is some, you can see some diversions. And then I guess the other place where there was some real switches was down in Pinal County and then Pima also.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Sturts?
Mr. Desmond, could you do an overlay of whole county version 3 on River District version 4?
Yes, I can.
Because it appears to me that districts 3 and 7 are identical.
That would be, yeah, because those are both from the Hispanic Coalition. They are identical.
District 4 is identical?
Should be just District 3. Let me. Whole county's version 3, correct?
That's correct.
I'm running out of pretty colors. Okay, so now this darker kind of purple right here. I know that's a little difficult to see. I apologize. That would be district. That's whole county's number 3. And why don't I make that line a little? Make that dash. See if that helps a little bit. Okay, and I'll zoom out a little bit. So, in whole counties, district number 2 tracks, or I guess this is district number 3 in whole counties, is significantly smaller, I guess. And that is, oh, it's actually not. It comes down And sorry, I'm a little.
It goes all the way to the north border of the Santa Cruz County.
I, yes.
So in Whole County's version 3, you have integrated the maps for the districts 3 and 7 from the
Hispanic Coalition
Thank
for
you.
Good Government.
Thank you, Hispanic Coalition for Good Government. And you've kept those two intact, and you've got, if my count is right, you've got 9 districts or 9 counties that are staying intact.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yuma gets split then additionally. And again, Javi got split, Graham got split. And then I think San Carlos might have been split also.
And the natural splits of Pinal, Maricopa, Pima,
Yeah,
and in this case, Mojave.
yeah.
Okay, and Yuma.
Mr. Herrera?
Mr. Desmond, can you let me know what the benchmark was for, on your version? So for District 7, so it went from 60.22 from what? Hispanic voting age population.
So what is it currently in that
Right.
district?
The
Do you
benchmark.
have that information, Joe? The current, I think it's right here. Might have brought this. It's currently 57.45% in the current District 4. So
Which is now in our map 7.
which is the off the grid map kind of number 7.
Sure. If like I think district, the River District version 4 is Commissioner McNulty's. I was wondering if she would be okay with trying to see if we can get it closer to the benchmark.
So closer to the current map. So
Right.
adjust the Hispanic coalitions.
Yeah, because I really do think that the 60, their the 60 point, what is it, 60.22 is a little high.
Would you like me to go back to version number 2 with a 58.92, somewhere around
Please.
there?
If Commissioner McNulty would be okay with that.
I mean, it'll be version 5 then,
Oh.
so it's,
But I want to make sure she's agreeable to that.
Sure, I'd be interested in looking at that.
okay. And then would you like me to kind of, so if we look at those two, I guess, side by side, that might be helpful. So the real areas of divergence are here, 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 and then Glendale. So I can go back to some of those past changes.
And the reason I bring this up, I mean, if we were to, I mean, obviously this is a what-if scenario, but what I don't want to see happen is for us to adopt a map which has a significant increase of the HVAP population from the current benchmark, and then every 10 years we are having to increase it, and pretty soon it's going to be super high. So I think at 58 it's already at a pretty good level, so I don't want to increase it any more than we have to.
Okay.
Again, I'm looking at that issue of packing and trying to avoid that.
That area north, east of 7,
Yes.
the red line that deviates over into
Oh, right here?
Shawnee?
Right, which one?
Do- Yes, sorry, I should use the pointer.
Use-
These areas. Should we think about moving those here or no?
Well, if it reduces the HVAP, but then we're going into an area that may not be well represented by District 7, if you go into the Paradise Valley area. I mean,
I think what happened was, you asked me to go over to, all the way to, I guess, the Scottsdale border. So this is taking it this red line, I believe, is going to like the Scottsdale border.
Is that's what you had asked for?
I think it is.
Okay.
Is that-
Okay.
Is to use that as one of the kind of the easternmost border. So I believe that's what that line reflects. And then I think that's what it is. I'm sorry.
I believe you.
Where's the 101?
Just one second. So I'm sorry, you're looking for the. Yeah. Sorry, that's a little crazy. Sorry. I made it a little better. Does that kind of show you what you're looking for?
Let's pull the whole map down a little bit. Other way. I want to see where the 101 wraps around to the north of 9. I want to see if we've got all of 9 within the 101. That's what I'm looking at. Need to keep going down.
No.
So it looks like it's interrupted here.
Yeah, it's probably not considered. They have a lot of different classes of. Let's see, turn that on if that helps.
Oh, I understand. So it depends on how the particular road is classified.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you could look this week at that question
Okay.
of this district and exploring whether it could be within the 101 rather than spilling out.
Okay.
Mr. Sturts?
Commissioner McNulty, I'm curious obviously all the questions are questions for what ifs, but I'm curious on the containment of within a highway system.
About what my thinking is, why I wanted to look at that, because I believe that this is kind of an older, kind of established part of North Phoenix. And last time when we looked at the map, we saw some Hispanic areas in here, and I think there's some growth and infill happening in here. So it's kind of a little bit, I think, like the area where we live. And so I'd like to see if this could be combined into one area that combines these North Phoenix neighborhoods and what that would look like and what the HVAP would be and what it might do in the future and what the competitiveness might be.
Okay.
Okay, is that something you want to see as a separate what if, or can that be combined with trying to lower the HVAP?
I think they could be combined.
Okay,
I don't think we need to do separate ones.
okay. Are there other areas of this you want to look at? Are there other what ifs you guys just want to look at starting from scratch again? I know we've been building on a lot of the current ones, but feel free to suggest anything from scratch that you'd like to see.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sturts?
Lily, are we done with looking at this?
It's totally up to you guys.
I am.
Okay. What I'd like to take a look at is to do a build off of the 3 border district map.
Okay. Two in a row. All right, what would you, how should we start? And I think the overlay right now is, I think that's the Pinal County submission from yesterday that we have overlaid.
The questions that came up in our brief overview of the 3 border district map yesterday were the concern about the current District 7 as it sort of amalgamated itself and crept around to pick up population to meet the Voters' Rights Act standard for HVAP. I'd like you to explore that further, utilizing a criteria very similar to the Hispanic Coalition's map for District 7,
Okay.
and picking up population for District 2 instead of going towards the western border of Maricopa, going to the western side of Phoenix to be able to pick up. The one thing I liked about the 3 border district map, based on the criteria that we've been discussing, was that we had nine counties that were intact. 2 districts were very close to the percentages of HVAP as are currently in place, almost identical, which leads very closely to what Commissioner Herrera was alluding to. And yet we had an increase in District 3 into a higher percentage of Hispanic representation under that than in any of the other maps that so far have been presented. So it was intriguing because it met so many of the criteria that have been discussed in the what-ifs. But I'd like to see if we can take the serpentine design of that out. I think you can. I think that there is some compilations that you can, just by paying a little bit, coming around the west side of the city and picking up the concentration on the west side of 7 and turning that into 2.
Should we try to do that right now?
You certainly may, or you can give this as a what-if scenario. It's up to the rest of up to the chair to decide how you want to approach that.
We have the time.
Okay.
Do others want to see any other what-ifs too that, besides this? Just out of anything new that Willie needs to generate for our next meeting on congressional?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Herrera?
I'd like to go back to to the map that we were looking at for the River District, which is version 4, and we were making some changes to make a version 5. Can we go back to that one real quick, if we're done with what if scenario here?
How long will it take to do the River District one, just out of curiosity?
I'm not, like to actually do those changes.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably have that done in like an hour or two.
Oh, okay.
We could go through it. It might not take that long. It's entirely possible it'd be less time than that.
Hmm.
So,
Do you have legislative ones to present today, too? You don't?
I don't.
Okay.
I did not. Just to clarify about those, I think the next set of what-ifs for those would be to take the 2 9-majority-minority districts and just try to respect county boundaries and town boundaries a little bit more, prioritize those types of things. So I did not have a chance to do those last night.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe we can do both of those, unless Commissioners Freeman and McNulty also have some additions, but maybe we could go through the 2 that Mr. Herrera and Mr. Sturts are interested in. I mean, I find it useful to just see how this is proceeding, but if others are not inclined, I'm happy to also see what y'all think.
I don't think I want to sit here and watch Willie for 2 hours.
I would not, no offense to Willie, but the what-if scenarios that I'd like to propose, some additional changes would be for homework.
Okay.
if you could
Here's
call
our
it that.
homework, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't want to see him moving stuff.
All right. Should we try to just make some minor changes here in this 3-border one, and then we can go back to the version 4 of the River District and then discuss the changes? Or would you like to do that, discuss the changes for River District and then do these? Or do you want both to be for homework? As I understand it right now, basically, district number 7, currently is ugly. So ideally what we would do is have 2, instead of coming up into Maricopa right in the middle of like kind of downtown Phoenix, have it come up in here.
Correct.
And see how much of the western edge it can take off in order to make this district a little
More contiguous.
more contiguous.
Correct. It'll be continuous and compact, and it'll have a natural, when you look at the highways and the traffic corridors, which, again, I've already given my explanation why this was intriguing. You also have this, if you pull out, you'll see that in District 2, there's sort of a tongue that's licking its way to the west in District 2. That little piece right there to the west.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
To the west.
Yes.
There you go. If that comes off, that's going to, you'll be able to pick up population in other areas. There's not enough density in there, but you'll be able to pick up the density and create more of a contiguous traffic pattern. If you do an overlay of highways, I think that you'll see that will make some sense.
Okay.
It'll also meet with the intent of 7. It's going to get closer to the Hispanic Coalition submittal. So, and I'm okay with doing that as a homework assignment.
Okay.
I mean, it's fascinating for us to look at it. As long as we've got these maps as they currently exist, all available to us, the public has these. It's fascinating to watch for the public right now to be able to do this, but a lot of this is also like watching paint dry. So
I completely understand.
as you're going through the exercise. But it's also important to know as we start drilling down that once we get past this place and we start getting sort of these large block views and we're capturing a lot of this data, I think that, and Madam Chair, as I was alluding to before the hearing started, I think our next meeting is going to be more so let's focus on putting Willie in the center of the room and doing more of a design work session where we can be having him work this through. Because I think the next few meetings that we've got are really designed for design meetings where we can be making lots of adjustments and seeing how these broader, as we're getting our heads around this, how they can be actually executed.
Sounds good.
Right.
So do you have everything you need,
I
Willie, from
think
Mr.
for those-
Sturts?
Those 2 what-ifs, yes.
Okay,
I can just go ahead and say that I should be able to complete those
okay.
in not that much time. We do have a pretty long gap. Not that I wouldn't mind having an evening off or 2, but if there's anything else that you guys wanted to add to my list of things to do besides the next one.
Madam Chair?
Okay, Mr. Herrera?
The what if scenario for the River District 3 versus the 4,
Mhm.
you know,
Let me go back
obviously
to that.
some changes, my changes that I'm a little concerned with, and is removing Maricopa County areas from District 5. So I'm talking about the version 4, and go into rural Pinal County instead. This would allow the district with the Navajos and Apache reservations to take in the Gila River Reservation as well. So we want to keep as many of the Native American reservations together.
Okay, so can you, I guess, walk me through that a little bit then?
Okay, so that's version 4, correct?
Yes.
So removing Maricopa County areas from District 5.
Okay.
So, no, it's not. And go into rural Pinal County.
Okay, so right now, District 5 comes down into
Correct.
Maricopa right here.
So,
Good. So you'd rather see that kind of shift down here?
yes.
Okay.
Then go into rural Pinal County.
Okay.
Again, this would allow the Native and Apache reservations to take in the Gila River Reservation as well. So.
Okay.
And then for District 6, I had mentioned last time that I want to keep Ahwatukee and the northern portion of Chandler together inside District 6. And again, this would be if Commissioner McNulty would be okay with these changes. And I have a couple more.
So I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, well, your last change was?
For District 6, if you can go to District 6,
Yeah.
to keep Ahwatukee in District 6.
Okay.
That, and the northern portion of Chandler together inside District 6.
Okay. So I think it currently is, this is Ahwatukee right here.
Okay.
So and I think Chandler is, by and large, it might dip down a little bit here.
Okay.
I could look at that.
Okay.
So you want to keep all of Chandler in?
No, not all of Chandler, just the northern portion of Chandler.
I think that change is already
Is that
reflected.
okay.
Yeah. This is Chandler, and District 6 is the blue area. The red is. The red is the River District version 3, I believe.
Okay, and then I'd mentioned that the Arcadia area being in District 6.
Okay.
Madam Chair, could you hold on that version? Am I looking correct that Chandler, could you bring up the borders of the city of Chandler for me, please?
Yeah. It's a little, they're a little hard to see because those borders aren't clean. But it looks like Chandler is this area right here. Again, one thing I can do to kind of show you this, I think, would be to use the redistricting tool. So we'll create we'll say we're moving it into a new district. We're selecting at the census place area. It's going to take a minute to think about this. All right. Spoke too soon?
Madam Chair, I mean, the question I'm asking, Willie, is that, am I seeing this right, that Chandler may be have 3 different congressional districts?
I think it's only in 2 because this is the Gila River reservation. So Chandler kind of goes like that.
And again, this is a what-if scenario, so
Sure.
we're doing.
No, I wanted to as we're looking at that, as we're trying to drill down certain those areas.
Wait, actually, I'm not done. Are you still, you have questions regarding
Well, actually yours, so go ahead,
the,
the version
So,
4.
there it is, I'm sorry. That's the boundaries of Chandler.
Okay, thank you.
again, I was talking about the Arcadia area being in District 6, as I mentioned before.
Okay.
And in District 6, if we can remove portions of East,
Do you, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt. Do you have borders you'd like me to use for Arcadia?
I mean, I can
Because
give
it's
you,
not an actual area.
sure, I can give you my definition of Arcadia, and it may not be the perfect one, but I can say, so Arcadia, I think, starts in 56th Street, and Thomas, all the way down to 40th Street, so following down Thomas, and then go on 40th Street and Thomas, go north all the way to, I think, Indian School. Camelback, thank you. Camelback, and go and head east, and again, take up 56th Street there. I think that area would be the Arcadia area.
Okay. And since we do have time before our next meeting, I'll try to mock that up and send something to the commission so you guys can review that and make sure that's kind of what you're talking about.
Sure, and I have, so then District 6, you remove portions of East Mesa that perhaps can be put into District 3.
Okay.
And those are my changes for, again, if Ms. McNulty is okay with them, for that.
May I ask a question, Madam
Of course
Chair?
you may.
I'm curious about, is this particular map something that you and Commissioner McNulty have been working on? I don't understand why you keep wondering whether or not it's okay with
No,
her.
because the reason I ask is, for example, I wouldn't make changes to your what-if scenario, because for example, let me just give you an example of what I'm trying to get at. So looking at your three-border district, I don't really agree with it, so if I started making changes to it, you probably wouldn't agree with those changes. There would be a different version of it.
That'd be okay. I think that this is the idea about these what-ifs are that we're trying to determine what the best possible maps can be for the state of Arizona.
And I agree, but I want to make sure that, because we could easily create many different versions of the what-if, so I'm trying to limit them to just these handful. I mean, I guess we can create more, I don't need, what I want to do is
I don't
respect her.
think you need to explain. I mean, I asked Mr. Herrera some questions about this geography and told him I'd follow his lead because he knows this part of the world.
Sure, and I want to make sure that and that would be for anybody if Commissioner.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
If
That's all I needed to know.
Sure, if Commissioner
you.
Freeman made some changes, I'd want to, make some changes to his version or his what-if scenario that I probably would do the same thing with Mr. Freeman, so.
That's
I'm just a polite guy. I apologize that I'm a polite individual, but I think that's it. I'm just being polite.
Okay. Can I just get a little clarification then on the parts of East Mesa you want moved into district number?
Yeah, can you go into a bigger version of can you expand that? So, let me see in my notes.
I can turn that.
Let me,
Maybe it would help, again, so, at least according to the census, this is what the area that's about to turn red is what's considered Mesa, so.
okay, let me look at 2 different maps.
So Mesa is in 3 district, yeah.
Mesa's it's a big city. And so
That orange part of Mesa too?
which part, right here?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like they have a little annexing to do.
Yeah, a lot of these gaps are parts that are unincorporated areas.
Unincorporated county?
I believe that is, if I click right there, yeah, that is an unincorporated area. That's not part of any census place.
Is it populated?
Probably. Let me check. All right.
That's all right, don't take a lot of time. It's
Sorry,
just-
there is no population in the area I just clicked on. Let me add to it a little more. Nope. 47 people right there.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
So for removing parts of East Mesa for District 6 and perhaps moving to District 3, can you go into the parts that are already in, the parts that are of Mesa or East Mesa that are in District 6?
Yes. Sorry. Just trying to identify it a little easier. All right, so currently this area is all Mesa and in District number 6. So District number 3 could come up and grab this. Or if it's, I think you mentioned just East Mesa.
Yeah,
Should
just portions of East Mesa.
just
Probably,
come
yeah, that area right there.
So just kind of extend this part up right here?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you
I
for
can do
adding. Yeah, makes it easier when you show it like that.
Are those all the changes?
For now.
Okay. Maybe we should take a break before we see if there's any more what-ifs we want Mr. Desmond to do. Take a 15-minute recess. It's 3:09 p.m. Okay, we'll enter back into public session. The time is 3:25 p.m. And I believe Mr. Herrera finished giving his directions to our mapping consultant on the map he's interested in, the changes, okay? And Mr. Sturts gave his. Any other what-if scenarios that any commissioners would like to see on congressional?
Madam Chair, if I
Mr.
could just for a moment. If there are, knowing that we are going to be having the opportunity for Willie to be back at his computer working for the next 5 days, assuming that he's going to take a night off. If we have more what-if scenarios, there's no reason at all in my mind that we could not submit those, copy Mr. Desmond and the rest of the commissioners electronically.
I agree, Mr. Bladeen can help facilitate that.
Okay,
That'd be great.
thanks.
To avoid any open meeting violations, we probably need to send them to the staff.
Right, Mr. Bladeen
make
would
sure
need
that
to
that-
do it. Any other what-if scenarios that Mr. Freeman or Ms. McNulty had?
Madam Chair, I don't know, Commissioner Herrera, it sounded like he had more changes to make. I think he just encourage him to make them, just lay them all out on the table right now.
Do you have additional changes, Mr. Herrera, that you want to discuss?
No, I think I made Madam Chair, no, I think I gave them all. But again, I think I agree with Mr. Sturts, Commissioner Sturts, if something comes up tomorrow, that I should be able to email
Mr. Bladeen?
Mr. Bladeen with that information.
Yep. Okay. Any other what-if scenarios that anyone would like to see?
Sure, Madam Chair.
Mr. Sturts?
On the whole county's version 3, one of the pieces that I picked up is that whether or not you would be able to connect in District 2, pick up all of Santa Cruz County in District 2 by expanding the volume of population in Yuma County into District 3. I'd like you to take a look at that for me, please.
I'm sorry, so I think,
District 2,
oh, you want that to go into,
go ahead and see and pick up Santa Cruz County,
okay,
and then be able to pick up the population that you're losing by capturing all of Yuma County.
okay.
You might have to pick up La Paz as well.
Okay.
I had a comment on the 3 border district one, Mr. Sturts. Is there a way to, and I don't know if you'd be amenable to this idea, but just keeping Santa Cruz whole in that one? Because the original one that I think that got generated split Santa Cruz in half.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to be able to keep Santa Cruz whole, which would mean either pulling that into 2 or 1.
Yeah.
And if you pulled it into 1, that would also help with the picking up of the pieces on the edges and softening the edges of that. Again, I think we're going to, if the goal is to try to get as many, from a legislative point of view, working together with county officials, having 2 congressmen working in a county as small as Santa Cruz is, might be a good benefit for Santa Cruz, but the people in Santa Cruz were very hopeful when we were down in Sierra Vista. They asked many times for them to be kept whole and intact and actually tied in with Cochise. Or
So-
when I was at Cochise County, in Nogales, excuse me, talking with the folks wanting to be kept with Sierra Vista.
So
yes.
could that be part of your,
Yeah, sure.
okay, you don't need to do a separate one, but
No.
just,
Okay, so put
as
that
part
with
of-
the
Yeah,
other.
take a look at that.
mhm.
Okay. Okay, so just to clarify, the 3 border will be changed basically to make it look better up in Maricopa and also to try to keep Santa Cruz whole.
In either 1 or 2.
Yeah, and the whole counties, we will move Santa Cruz into District 2 and all of Yuma into District 3. And then the River District version 4 will be changed to reflect the changes for Arcadia and some of the other parts that I have, to lower the HVAP. And then move the Gila Reservation to District 5. And also, I think it's possible I'll be able to also try to do District 7, lower HVAP, and District 9 within Highway 101, but that might have to be a separate version. I'm not sure yet, so I'll look at it. If it makes sense to do those separately, if they kind of conflict, I'll have 2 versions. If not, I'll try to make those into 1 version. That's all right? Is there anything I'm missing, I guess?
Okay, any other what-ifs that we want to have him do? Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Desmond.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is number 4, review, discussion, and direction of mapping consultant regarding ideas for possible adjustments to the legislative grid map based on constitutional criteria. I don't think we have anything new to look at, right? But I think Ms. McNulty mentioned she had some comments or questions on one.
I'd like to look at option 1 that you did last time.
Okay. So this is option 1. That's been adjusted again to not split tribal areas. So, there,
Let's go down south. Maybe I'm 2. As I was looking at this last night, we've got Sanavir, which is, see where it says three points? That's part of the Tohono O'odham Nation. And then this little thing is the Akchin Reservation.
Yes, and this was pointed out to me after the meeting yesterday.
I think they should be together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think we need to, I'm not sure how we do this, but once we move this into here, I think we need to fix this little area of population. We need to clean that up.
Okay, let me zoom in there a little bit. Okay. And I believe the way this does look so jagged is that this is, I was using census tract a lot of times and then trying to reach the majority minority districts. That's probably why it's kind of going like that, and then to get it close.
Madam Chair, just for the record, and Commissioner McNulty, you may want to describe a little bit more about what you're asking, because I'm not sure it will be reflected in the record based on the description.
Based on me waving this pointer around. Sorry. Yes, I'd like to move the Sanavir area of the Tohono O'odham Reservation and the Akchin Reservation, move the boundaries so that that's included in the whatever we call that grid number that is to the east of it. And then I think when we do that, we're going to pick up some population. We're going to take some population some of this Hispanic population here that's in the South Tucson area can come down into this southern district.
Okay, so we're going to move this into District 3 over here, so it's with the rest of the reservation. And then as a result, try to, I guess, improve the compactness of this area right here. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And then like go up north to the top of the state. And do the same sort of thing, pick up the Pi tribes in this District 7. This area here.
Okay. So that all of these,
Yes.
I can look at that. Just one thing is the District 7 is already exceeding the current voting age Indian population.
That's okay.
Okay.
I'd still like to look at it. I don't think that can go too high from, it's kind of a different issue.
Okay.
And then I'd like to look at keeping Flagstaff together with the Winslow-Holbrook area along that. So maybe taking out so including in this district up here, southern Apache County, but moving some of Navajo County, southern Navajo County into the Flagstaff district.
So, sorry. Which area?
Right here.
Okay.
So we would be moving this into the Flagstaff district to kind of tie those together So the boundary would be more like here, maybe.
Oh,
So,
okay. that all
and
makes
then
sense.
the other thing I couldn't tell from the map, but I'd like you to look in and make sure that Prescott and Prescott Valley are, that Flagstaff, this Flagstaff district does not include Prescott or Prescott Valley.
Okay.
It kind of looked like maybe it was straddling.
Let me see if I can. Okay, so yeah, parts of Prescott Valley are with Flagstaff.
Yeah,
up
it just
here.
looked like they were being split, and I think they should all be together in this 14.
Okay, let me just look at Prescott, just for your. Okay. Are there other changes to this? And those last two changes will sync in well with the next set. That's also going to respect municipal boundaries also. So try to keep more of those holes. Are there other changes to this option 1, or do you want me to go to option 2? Would you like me to also verify that these things happen in option 2 also? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
And then when do you think the draft that we had previously given instructions upon will be ready?
Well, that'll be the next thing I work on. So hopefully early in the week, maybe Monday, Tuesday morning.
Yesterday you mentioned files from Arizona Minority Coalition.
Yeah, we only have, I believe, let me check. I think we only have like pictures of their maps. I don't think we have map files.
I guess I don't know what those are, but I'm curious to know if we're going to get map files.
If I remember correctly, I believe they're planning on presenting next week.
Oh, okay.
Was Senator or Rep. Miranda at the meeting on Wednesday? Didn't he say that the Minority Coalition was hoping to present next week?
I don't recall that. Is that correct, Ms. Gomez?
Yes, they did inform us that they will be working on those maps to revise them, and they would like to present them sometime next week.
Okay, great.
And those are legislative maps?
Yes.
Okay, so we can't get map files for those now?
I was informed, no.
Okay. I think we're going to need that input.
Anything else on legislative that anyone would like to see? Next time? Okay. And you have your marching orders?
Yeah, so
Okay.
there'll be, I guess, 2 more versions of each one of these maps. And then again, email if there's anything you think of or you'd be curious about.
Right, and we'll work that through Mr. Bladine. Okay, thank you, Mr. Desmond. We've already covered, I think, item 5, unless anyone's thought of any other future agenda items. We laboriously went through our schedule yesterday, so I think our meetings for September are somewhat confirmed and set. Any other future agenda items from anyone for now? And of course, this isn't the last opportunity. You can email Mr. Bladine with that if you think of anything you want to add. The Executive Director's Report, number 6, we've done. Number 7, report legal advice and direction to council regarding Attorney General inquiry. I'm not sure that there is an update to provide today. And if there is, we would do it after public comment, but.
Madam Chair, there's no new update to provide at this time.
Okay. Which would take us to public comment. And I have a number of requests to speak forms. And just to remind the public to please come up to the microphone and speak directly into it and spell your name when you start so that we get an accurate accounting. So our first speaker is Mohar Sidwa, representing Self from Tucson.
Madam Chair, before we begin, I'd like to make sure that we're limiting the comments to 4 minutes.
Okay, yes, if we could limit comments to 4 minutes, that would be great.
Mohur, M-O-H-U-R, Sarah with an H, Sidhwa, S-I-D-H-W-A. Couple of things that have been coming to mind. One of them was a comment I heard yesterday, and I think it was from the mapping people, that data from prisons is very slow in coming, and there's a lot of foot dragging at their end. You know, if I were a betting person, I would bet that by the time we get the data, it'll be too late for us to consider it. You are a legislative body. Therefore, you have the right to subpoena. So while you're drawing all these, beautiful maps, and yes, there may be 50 prisoners in Wilmot, if that's what you found, but there are over 3,000 plus in Eloy, and the registered voters there are about 1,700. There's something skewed here. You've got to take that into account. Florence is in the thousands. And this is something I will be hammering away on, because this reaches into the very heart of our democratic system of one person, one vote. So just kind of keep that in mind. The other thing that concerns me is, I think, the matter of packing. If one minority district has grown quite a bit, and it's gone from, say, 53% to now 59%, for heaven's sake, don't overpack it. It's okay to bring it down. In other words, this is my personal thing. If a minority district is over 53, 54%, then I will consider it kind of packing. So just avoid that if you can, because we don't want to have that scenario and thereby have the loss of minority influence on a nearby district. And once again, since I've been following you around, it's exhausting. You guys must be very exhausted, and honestly, I appreciate all 5 of you for doing what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Herrera?
What I'd like to do is, I know we had asked our attorneys to look into the issue of the prison population. At our next meeting, hopefully they can give us an update of what they've found and how we can start addressing the prison population when we go forward with the what-if scenarios.
Yes, I think that's
At
on
the
their
next
to-do
meeting.
list.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Fisher from LD 21.
Hi, my name is Sandra Fisher, S-A-N-D-R-A-F-I-S-C-H-E-R. I happen to be the Democratic chair of District 21. I am also the chair of my toy drive in Marlboro Mesa. I guess I was hoping to see a little bit more about the legislative maps and seeing a little bit of difference, so I don't know that I have a whole lot to say today. I think you guys really have made some great comments about these maps and doing the differences. So what I saw on the website before I came here was not enough for me to see, but I guess you've come across some new maps and you're going to have those out. That's, I guess, more what I'm looking at, because the more important thing for me is always having it compact and really and competitive. And I think that's real critical. Being in Maricopa County, yeah, it is hard to see some of those differences, and to see some of Maricopa go with, well, when it comes to congressional districts, to see part of Maricopa go with all these outer rural areas is a concern, because we have so little in common with the rural areas. And it's hard to see where they would have to meet, where a congressman would have to meet with his district if he has to go all over. But then again, watching you, it's hard to see how you can't include some of Maricopa and some of that. But that would be a thing I'd be concerned about when it comes to congressional districts, is how much, if you can get as little of Maricopa in some of that if possible. And again, I think you guys are doing a great job, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim March, representing Pima County Libertarian Party.
Hi, folks. Jim March. Last name spelled the same as the month. I really appreciate the comments that were made yesterday. I apparently stepped out of the room, directing council to figure out what are our options regarding the jails. I'd like to very briefly go over what looks to me like 4 different options. Option 1 is to ignore it, which is what they did in 2000. There's 2 problems with that. The jail population disparity has increased in the last 10 years. The Pinal County in particular has become home to several private prisons, bringing prisoners out of state. So the geographic concentration of the prisons has increased in the last 10 years, and the severity of the potential disparity has increased. So I don't think that ignoring it is just a good idea. Plus, because it's going to have a disparate impact on the First Nations, their attorneys are going to have a lot to say if it doesn't get fixed. Plan B is what New York came up with, which is assign each prisoner a known real origin and think of them as a registered voter of wherever they really come from. If they're imprisoned in Eloy and they really came from Flagstaff, then they're a Flagstaff voter. If they're from Mexico City, then they're a Mexican voter, and so on and so on. The problem you're going to run into with that plan is it means getting very detailed information out of the various prisons. The private ones and the federal ones in particular might decide that you don't have that authority, or it may require coordination with the legislature and create new legislation to come up with that kind of a plan. Now, New York State actually went there, and they're doing that. So it should be seen as an option, but it's a more difficult one than other choices. Next option you've got is to discount the prisons completely as population for purposes of these districts. There's maybe a problem with that too, and it goes like this. The prisoners don't have a lot of civil rights, but one of the few they do have is the First Amendment right to petition for redress of grievance. And some of the people they have the ability to petition are their congressmen and their state legislators. So if you exclude them from those legislative maps, maybe, at least in theory, it might be appraised in court that you stripped them of that particular First Amendment right. So that could get ugly. And the last option would be the so-called tendrils option, or physically redistribute the prisons across all the districts by doing very strange little border lines that will come out of, for example, a particular district that the Navajo Nation's in, and one little tendril might drop down somewhere into Pinal and envelop a couple of prisons to relocate them up that way. That type of activity would do slightly obscene things to the idea of compact and contiguous, but not really. And it would survive court challenge, and other than looking bad, it would be completely within the scope of what everybody knows you can do. So personally, I think that's the option you're going to be left with. I think. I would be really interested to hear what options your attorneys come up with. But my guess is you're going to end up with number D. Anyways, I hope this sheds some light on your problem, and I appreciate you working on it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wes Harris, representing Self from Phoenix.
Hi, it's Wes Harris, W-E-S, H-A-R-R-I-S. I live in north central Phoenix. Yesterday evening I ran out of time to talk to you about all the points I wish to make, so I came back today to do that. Numbering of CDs and LDs, unless it's by design, numbering all of these CDs and LDs differently than we currently have causes confusion, plus it clouds the changes that you're making. Before you move further, I would urge you to renumber them as closely as possible to the existing numbers. Second, with your gerrymandering to create more Latino minority districts, you've apparently forgotten about the other so-called minorities. What about blacks, Asians, Eastern Europeans, etc.? You see, by creating false minority districts, you're creating voter ghettos, which is the opposite, I believe, of the intent of the Voters Act. Speaking of Latinos, you're using the term Hispanic to describe this group of citizens. If you are truly Hispanic, you have to come from the Iberian Peninsula, which means you're either Spanish or Portuguese. Unless you come from Mexico and maintained your bloodlines from the conquistador time, you're not Hispanic. So by definition, you're not a minority. But personally, I abhor the fact that we call Latinos or anybody else minorities. I find it distasteful, and for that matter, any other group that's classified, therefore separate them from us, and they become separate but equal, which is what in the 60s we got rid of. To reiterate my concerns yesterday, I abhor your idea of hiring another attorney to represent this commission before ours and your Attorney General. I also resist the idea of hiring another left-leaning professor from Boston to interpret the voters' rights impact of your work. Now, what do you have these three attorneys for? Isn't that what they're supposed to do? I suggest that if you need attorneys, that you hire them by the hour, rather than having sitting around and answering, not being able to answer questions that are asked, as they did yesterday. And I would again like to revisit the university problem. Universities, like prisons, have populations that distort the area that they rest in. Unlike prisoners, they can vote, and by aligning them with a small area, they exercise unreasonably on the surrounding community, and so that they perhaps should be separated from that community, mainly because they do not fulfill the requirement of community interest. At the very least, at the very most, they are temporary residents in nature, and effect they have on the contiguous population is distorted at best. If you look at the city of Berkeley as an example, Berkeley is a very poor city, and it's adversely affected by the voters of the University of California at Berkeley. This is also a situation we have with the University of Arizona and ASU in Tempe and Tucson. Again, I question your choices of meeting places. Why are you having 4 of the next 7 meetings in Casa Grande? Well, only one in our second largest city, Tucson, and 2 in Phoenix. Maricopa County makes up 68% of the population, and yet we don't seem to be spending enough time there, in my opinion. Now, finally, I do not have to sit through these meetings. They are convoluted, inefficient, except today. Today was a very good meeting. The last 2 were terrible. But I think your contractor is doing you a great disservice and should be terminated. Sitting here, meeting after meeting, getting a lesson on how to use a mouse is not my idea of what this is all about. They should have printed out maps for you and us. I have no map. The only map I have is this one from the Pinal County Government Alliance. I'm almost done.
Go ahead.
So I would suggest that this particular contractor is a yoke around your neck, and I think you should terminate them and get rid of them once and for all. And finally, who is this Hispanic Coalition for Good Government? And where are they? And where is their map? I haven't seen it. It appears that they're getting more attention than others. Is that true? Have you overlaid the Pinal County map that was talked about yesterday? on your maps? I know you can't answer my question, but there it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Rossiter from Greater Phoenix Tea Party.
Hi, my name is Chris Rossiter, CHRISROSSITER. I'm the Vice President of the Greater Phoenix Tea Party, and I'm not usually the one that speaks, so since I'm mostly going to read something, I figured I probably couldn't screw that up. So this is a letter that we submitted to the governor yesterday. It's in response to to a letter that was presented on the back table at the meeting on August 31st at the redistricting meeting. Anyway, Honorable Janice K. Brewer, Governor of the State of Arizona, copy to the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. Dear Governor Brewer, on August 17, 2011, you received a letter from various Arizona legislators, politicians, and organizations which presume to inform you that members of the AIRC were being exposed to intimidation and interference created by undisclosed politicians and partisans who are allegedly opposed to an independent process to establish, quote, fair and competitive districts, end quote. At the redistricting meeting on August 31st, 2011, a copy of that letter was furnished to all attendees by the AIRC. No letters supporting any other viewpoint were distributed. This letter, touted repeatedly by Commissioner Herrera as bipartisan, as though that is the litmus that establishes the moral superiority and value of a political entity, argument, or action, was not merely disingenuous. Its origins reek of demagoguery by groups who are hoping to involve your office in an attempt to intimidate and dissuade any further oversight of the redistricting process by a vigilant citizenry which seeks merely to ensure, by their involvement, that this process is as fair as possible. Since this process began, the so-called partisans who are supposedly opposed to an independent and fair process helped uncover that a potential conflict of interest was not disclosed by one of the commissioners on their application. It was also learned that a violation of Arizona's open meeting laws may have occurred. That matter is being looked at by Attorney General Tom Horn. Lastly, it was learned that strategic telemetry, the independent contractor chosen to map new districts, has no other experience than to have worked for liberal Democrat organizations and candidates throughout the United States. The Commission has acted recently to increase scrutiny on the communication reporting requirements of this contractor to help alleviate transparency concerns on the part of the public. For that, we are thankful, and we will continue to monitor this aspect of the process very closely. The letter submitted to you on August 17th said that the message sent by voters when they passed Prop 106 in 2000 was to, quote, remove the ability of politicians to gerrymander districts for the benefit of themselves or their political party, end quote. While that is true, this does not dissolve the reasonable expectation that citizens will have to monitor the entity established to conduct redistricting. After all, it would be naive to assume that the newly established process will be perfect and not susceptible to age-old methods of manipulation and corruption. The previously mentioned discoveries seem to bear the wisdom of this out. Who will watch the watchers? I assure you that we will. That is the duty of the sovereign American citizen, and we are beginning to take it seriously after too many generations of having neglected it. Our nation is currently reaping the destruction that over 40 years of the erosion of progressivism has wrought on our institutions. It's time to return to our first principles. It's time to return to the tested things that made us once the most prosperous and free people in the history of the world. Demanding accountability from those who are supposed to represent us, ensuring that the faith of the voters in this new process is honored, and being intolerant of corruption at all levels of government was deemed to be intimidation by the author and signatories of the letter you previously received. Our organization views the insistence on these things as a tacit duty of all Constitution-loving American citizens. We hope that you will share our concerns and will instruct your office to oversee the AIRC and prevent any intimidation by entities or individuals who commonly employ such tactics from jeopardizing the goal of this process, a fair and impartial outcome under the law. Sincerely, Chris Rossiter, Vice President, Greater Phoenix Tea Party, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Greater Phoenix Tea Party. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jerry Ottoboni from Pima County.
Commission, my name is Jerry Ottoboni. That's Ottoboni. Excuse my voice. I was cutting some desert broom, and I suppose you shouldn't be doing that. I'm amazed that all the other mapping companies who bid on this contract included in their bids, a person to do the polarized voting and competitive analysis. The other companies would have paid that person from the money they received to do the job. No extra money would have been needed. Surprise! The most expensive company did not include this person in their bid, but they are the ones who were hired. Wasn't that commission aware of this when they voted for strategic telemetry? And who is paying for it? We, the taxpayer. This is in this terrible, horrible economy. We, the taxpayer, I strongly suggest that strategic telemetry pay for this subcontract out of their salary without this subcontract adding more money to their contract. They should have included their expense in the bid, like everyone else. Just for your information, to put this in on the record, the Harvard professor is the most expensive person in the United States who does this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lynn St. Angelo from Pima County.
Thank you. St. Angelo, S-T period, A-N-G-E-L-O, Lynn, L-Y-N-N-E. I wanted to just comment on the information that was presented yesterday about the data, the voting data from the different years, 2004 and 2006. I do hope that you do include this data. I actually think you should include 2002 since the last commission that was included in the changes that were made, all the votes that happened since then. When I looked at if my district was competitive, I looked at the data back to 2002 as well. It only seems logical that that would be included. Why that wasn't included in the money, I don't understand. I don't understand how, when I looked at all the other bidders on the RFP, it didn't look like they said they wouldn't include the data and that would not be part of their bid. They also included the other bidders on the contract. They included subcontractors, and some of them were for public information, archival public input and comments, coordination of public comments to be incorporated into redistricting scenarios, and they had internet mapping applications, and that was a part of their subcontractors. Another one had capturing public input and facilitating public meetings and hearings. So instead of the subcontractors that were included, as I understand it, in the RFPs and the amount of money that the other bidders bid on it, we now have Maptitude, who we're paying for. We have Catalyst Secure and some other staff that have been hired to do that, and now we're hiring Professor King to do the polarized voting and the competitiveness, which was also included as a subcontractor in National Demographics Corporation. So my concern is that, one, there's now at least 4 things that I count that aren't included in the contract that we're paying for strategic telemetry for, and there's no way that I can tell based on the budget projection that was presented where that information is going to be shown so that we can actually see the amount of money that's being spent on each of these, especially if there's an open-ended contract to Professor King. Right now, on the legal fees includes Osborne, Maladorn, and strategic telemetry as one lump sum for the month of July of $66,000. So you can't tell what did strategic telemetry get, what did Osborne Maladon get. I didn't think strategic telemetry was a legal fee. I thought they were some kind of a consultant. Even on the list of the breakdown on the this is the actual cost for July. The travel outside was $28, and I've been following you around, and I don't see how that's possible, that a travel expense could be only $28. So I would like to see how you're going to do the breakdown so that the public can follow all these different things that are being added to what is now going to be charged for different pieces of the RFP that is not included evidently in the contract already with strategic telemetry. And that I would like to know. The other thing I wanted to find out about, it looks like the total expenses on the end of July was $260,000, and it's hard to tell, but I thought it looks like the budget was $213,000. So that means that we're already over budget, and now we're hiring a lot more companies, and I do think that the public deserves to see line item by line item the expenses that are being incurred. Thank you.
Thank you. My last request to speak form is State Representative John Kavanaugh, representing Self.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment. I represent most of Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, and Rio Verde, and I'd like to briefly comment on the congressional map that was shown, or one of them shown today, and also on legislative map. On the congressional map, or maps, I didn't see all of them, all of Fountain Hills, all of Rio Verde, and the northern section of Scottsdale has been placed into the more rural 5th Congressional District, as opposed to the 9th, which is Metropolitan Phoenix. I don't know if that's something that you just haven't gotten around to because that part of the process hasn't been approached yet, or if it was purposeful in some of the versions. But I sincerely hope that Fountain Hills and all of Scottsdale and Rio Verde will stay in the Phoenix Metro District, because obviously we share much more in common with where we live than a rural district. So please keep that in mind as you go through different iterations. I wasn't aware that you had gone beyond the first two more chance computer-generated grid maps. So I'm not really sure what the district that I would be living in would look like now. But in the original grid maps, Fountain Hills was one end of the district, and it looped over Phoenix, through northern Phoenix, and stretched like a ribbon all the way to the west side by I-17. And clearly not a compact district. Again, I hope that's something that will be taken care of when you start to talk about compactness. But it would be extremely difficult. I mean, aside from the fact that there are too many communities distinct that don't really interact with each other in such a long district, it would be extremely difficult to represent people along that large a swath. That's an unfortunate reality we have in rural districts where the population is not dense, but there's really no excuse to create that kind of barrier between a representative and his or her constituents in a more dense area. So I hope that you would take that into account also. I thank you.
Thank you. Any other public member that would like to speak today? Okay, that takes us to the end of the slips, and I believe the only item left on the agenda is to adjourn. And so at 4:11 p.m., this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.